everyone, Pioneer and Apple here with the next 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew, episode 5 and 6. Last time we had 2 solid episodes, even if we've seen the archetype of episode 4 on other shows. The characters were used well, and both the action and mystery are continued. This time we see what is essentially a 2-parter setting up the return to At-Atin. And what I assume will be the character dynamics going into the finale, giving us new character dynamics and further exploration with the characters, which I thought were at least interesting. So let's jump into episode 5 and see if these episodes are a good enough build-up. We actually get off to a pretty interesting start this time around, as the parents have gotten together for a spot of espionage, although Wendell is less receptive to the plan than Neil's mother, and is almost caught stealing a code to send a message through the planet's barrier, getting a couple laughs, but Fern's mum manages to save his ass using the same trick Fern uses for their home robot on the surveillance droids. Wendell actually takes another step up, convincing Fern's mum they have to pull their fingers out and act, when she was pretty firm in waiting for the supervisor to act. This is actually really nice to see, and I think I would have liked a little more of the parents on their own over the show, as it helps flesh them out. As of this point, we've only seen little glimpses of Neil's mother, and KB's parents might as well not exist. But it's nice to see at least some of them fleshed out. Otherwise, they would have just been window dressing for the other characters to build off. Meanwhile, back on the ship, they wake SM-33 back on. Fern and Jod back at square one, even though I thought we had gone through enough of that stuff last time. And with SM-33 no longer murdery, we learn the origin of their ship. Its old captain, Tak Renard, having sought At-Atin and gone missing. As the tale goes, he went missing along with his ship, the Onyx Cinder, Jod doing well to sell the story. They figure if Tak Renard had the coordinates, he would have hid them in his base, so they head there as SM-33 regales them of how the ship crashed on At-Atin, supposedly killing all inside. The children cutely treat the info as a story time, as 33 sets the base up as a wonderful place, but as Wim starts to feel overwhelmed, Jod finds him crying in a back room, and although disgusted by the situation, does try to help the boy after hearing of Wim's mother's death. Jod gives him the Jedi's attachment spiel, which makes me think he has a Jedi backstory we're yet to see, and although crass, he does well to make Wim more comfortable with the idea of being a real adventurer. Coming into land, it turns out the base has been renovated into a pleasure spa, having to take disguises and bullshit their way inside, much to SM-33's dismay, as he despairs over how far the place's reputation has fallen. The children once again stop trusting Jod. Jesus, I just wish there was a middle ground here. And while a lot of the interactions at the spa are played for laughs like the hotelier's disgust at the grotty ship, it doesn't do much for me. They go on about how kids aren't allowed, so the kids get terrible disguises as elders, and while I'm interested in the whole Goonies hidden treasure aspect, the only comedy that lands for me is SM-33's disgust at how the planet's turned out.
Goldridge Mountain? They ruined it!
Their weapons are taken and SM-33 is put on peaceful mode, but Jod cleverly uses the Force to keep a knife on him. The spa is a good design, and it turns out the place is on high alert thanks to the banking clan visiting. Wow, that dialogue choice made me feel like we were back in the prequels.
My lord, is that legal?
I will make it legal.
But that ends up being a little useless, as using more of their credits get them in anyway. But not before Jod is intercepted by a bounty hunter he once knew, Pocket, played by Brave star Kelly MacDonald. And although he screwed her over a time ago, she's totally over it. Although seemed to be a little worried that the name he used was untraceable. Yeah, so she's gonna screw him over, right? She even tells the kids not to trust him, another woman telling them to run away from him. I wonder if they're gonna listen while they have the chance. Yeah, that's once again sarcasm, they don't. The kids are acting strangely like children. Seriously, I'm not sure why, but the way that they're being childish here doesn't really fit with how they've been in the show before. Seemingly only there to light Jod's fuse that blows at the end of the episode. I'm with Jod here, because they are suddenly far more annoying than the last 4 episodes. It's like all of them have turned into Wim. So they set off to search for a symbol denoting the entrance to the lair, and to no one's surprise, Pocket has given Brutus a call. After a funny joke with a hut, it doesn't take long for the Republic officers to start chasing Jod, KB and Neil, while Fern, SM-33 and Wim find the symbol on the stone floor underneath the spa, but are intercepted by a large being relaxing in the cavern who scares them initially but is actually quite friendly. Jod and the kids are almost captured, but KB is menace enough to get them running again. 33 coming to lead them down to Fern and Wim, who are entertaining Catholips, who also says they shouldn't trust Jod. Laying it on thick in this episode, aren't ya? Catholips breaks the stone floor to allow them access below, cause he's just a G like that, and Brutus's crew make their descent, blowing the spar cruisers out of the sky. The episode momentarily turns into Indiana Jones, as they dodge traps in the tunnels, Fern and Jod arguing again, and we get a pretty good example of the traps as Jaleel White sends a Republic guard into one. They come to one final trap that looks pretty nice, and they have to solve a riddle. So they end up having to send their last Datary into the acid, unlocking the chamber below. Datary, that's a weird name. Why don't you just call them credits? Is there a difference? I simultaneously wish I knew more about the Star Wars lore, and dread the complicated and pernickety beast that it is. They once again try to bring back wizard as a phrase, and Jod warns them to search the treasure for what they need, but not touch anything else due to some clever traps, almost sending them underground, but within a false roast bird, strange I know, they find the info they need in a hologram of the captain, and flooding the chamber before, now filled with pirates, back up with acid, which is when Jod starts unraveling. The captain's hologram obscures his face, which I swear to God if that isn't a twist later, I have no idea what this show is doing. It wasn't a twist later, I have no idea what this show is doing. And he reveals the planet was a mint, explaining the whole treasure idea. This info really gets into Jod's head, infinite money, so he challenges Fern for her position as captain, SM-33 having to stay out of it, and this guy's really ready to slit her throat. But even when Wim sees a lightsaber among the treasure, he activates it the wrong way and gives up, meaning Fern has to concede, SM-33 now loyal to Jod. He decides to take the kids prisoner, but in one last effort to escape, Wim activates the trapdoor from earlier, leaving Jod alone with the lightsaber. What a cliffhanger. While the characterization was a bit unnatural this episode, that last bit where Jod goes full psycho instead of just morally grey was pretty good, but didn't come from nowhere, and unlike the past 4 episodes, really hooks you into wanting to see where the show goes. Alright, so now into episode 6 with a very good, and when it comes to one particular button in the ship, a needed previously on segment. We see the kids slide down the hole, ending up shooting out of the pipes at the bottom of the mountain with no good way up. KB not able to move so well after the fall, all this stress jamming up her augmentations, which is an interesting part of her character to explore, almost like exploring a character's disability. And to add to the interest, it's Wim who she explores this with later, not Fern, who is the character she's closest to. Back on the surface, Jod escapes with some jewels, but Jaleel White gets the jump on him, unable to be swayed by his pretty words.
33! Attack!
X-Wings start descending, meaning the pirates take a hasty retreat. A decent sky battle, but I think we could have seen more. Not just the kids finally realizing Jod is a liar, and calling out as if the ships could ever see or hear them. KB comes in clutch again as she got the coordinates of the planet when Jod did, but this is where the rifts start. Fern keeps up her captain attitude, pissing off KB, who disagrees with Fern, the nimble girl rushing to climb the cliff, but KB rightly tells her that she needs to ask others for input. She is captain no longer. She then does, even if a little bit too angrily, and then KB doesn't discuss it. I mean, they're cut off right after, but KB still had the opportunity to say something and didn't. Well, even the MVP of the show can't be perfect, and this is justified when we explore a character later. You should listen to others. Okay, do you have any recommendations? The interruption was Wim and Neil being swarmed by some friendly talking trash crabs, but his plan to follow these crabs revolts Neil, so with KB taking Wim's side they split, Fern taking Neil up the side of the cliff, and my favourite and least liked characters following the locals. By the way, it's probably the volume like many of their other shows, but the background of this planet with the sun low in the sky actually looks pretty great. Back with Jod, Brutus is ready to throw him into space, with the other pirates cheering along. But one woman looks hesitant, pointing out that Jod Law over there is allowed time to speak and make a case. He spends like half of it just sitting there complaining, but eventually starts talking about Atatin, and playing to some of the pirates personally. And to make a point, he starts singing, which is a nice touch on top. Even Jaleel White is getting on board. Brutus is interested though, and decides to flush a bunch of garbage to make a point of what he'll do if there's no Atatin. Back with Wim and KB, they start off a little rocky, Wim finding some junk, but KB stopped moving again. Parts of her mechanics rusted, so he runs off to find her replacements. The other two are climbing the side of the cliff, and Neil has to teach Fern a lesson, which is an interesting development of having the two together. His body shape less made to climb than Fern, who complains he isn't going fast enough. KB tells Wim what to do, and Wim figures out that this is why she wouldn't climb, being pretty dangerous for her in her state. And she talks about how Fern views her, being the most interesting relationship of the four. Fern treating KB as if she was like any other kid, but not taking into account that some things might be hard of her to do because of her augmentations. Wim and KB actually have a cute moment, and as her condition worsens, he finishes making her spare part, that I think may have cooled too quickly, but after a little scrambling, she's up and running again. But you know, after giving him a scare as she almost dies, and they continue on, closer than before. But some of the dialogue at the end here could have done with a little rewriting, but the interaction is cute and needed. We switch back to Fern and Neil, who now have a new system, working in tandem to help Neil climb at the same rate. I may be a dumbass, but I remember in episode 4, when KB stands strangely still on the foggy-ass Akron, that could have been a consequence of her tech failing in the unsuitable environment. As in episode 5 we learnt Steam messes with her tech. Although considering it's not referenced at all, I guess it was unintentional. The crabs lead KB and Wim to their mother, a big fuck-off crab, which makes their life cycle kind of funny. The small ones act cute and lure meals to the queen, I guess? We then get to start a cool-looking, if a little implausible action sequence, as drones start lifting the onyx cinder off the platform to the trash heaps. Fern and Neil badassly take a leap of faith to try and guide it down safely, and they end up aiming it directly past KB and Wim, picking them up as they fly by. Somehow, the crab is intelligent enough to piff a rock at them, sending them into the ground below, where they reconcile, apologizing and accepting all around. Conveniently, for the story, not the characters, the ship lands directly in front of an incinerator machine, and they desperately try to start the ship and fly away. It's another long sequence, pretty tense, and it looks quite nice as they scramble to get away, but I'm not too sure about the incinerator. It felt like it wasn't going at a consistent speed, and you want it to do that to serve the tension of the moment. That's a weird line to say. You can't be too invincible. Invincible is invincible. It's like saying you're too immortal. Well, you're immortal or you're not. They end up hitting the button that slims the ship down that I would have forgotten completely about if it wasn't for the previously on segment, and they escape with a much better looking ship. So why the fuck was it covered in rusting garbage? Even though it was the ship of a famous pirate and hidden underground. So that's the end of episode 6, a pretty solid episode that succeeded in trying out new character dynamics to flesh them all out. Me hating Wim less and liking where Fern and KB went, but not as much as Fern's moments in episode 4 and 5, whereas Jod was pathetically sidelined after last episode's cool cliffhanger and his straight evil heel turn. This episode also did something interesting in the way it did some commentary using KB's augmentations to actually tell a story. The way her augmentations, that she had to have after an accident, are placed in her relationship with Fern make for an angle that could have been a little more explored, but as it is, I haven't heard anyone point and scream DEI, so it must be fine. But it is a really interesting way to make an allegory out of Star Wars' often seen cybernetic augmentations, which could be felt anywhere from someone with a hearing aid to someone with a fake leg. Next time we cover the last 2 episodes and see if the series ends well, or as poorly as the last Disney show we checked out on the channel.
She was pointing out the name of the road. She was naming you.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb!
Thank you everybody for watching my review of episodes 5 and 6 of Skeleton Crew. Please like the video if you liked it, comment down below if you wish, or if there's something you want to recommend I check out on the channel. Speaking of the channel, please subscribe, and if you do, ring that notification bell so that you're told every single time that I make an upload. Once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next review. Bye!
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.